There you go.
Welcome to Introduction to Woodmancy. Now, you might think that this is some sort of joke, but it is not. This is something that I don't show the plebeians. In Harry Potter universe, you call them the muggles. Those that don't understand woodmancy, we never show them this sort of thing. And now, with you in the know, so to speak, you're forever linked with the woodmancer. Don't ever tell anyone about what you see here today, because if they tell the authorities, they will come after you. This is a dangerous art, and something I am not at liberty to show you, but I'm doing it anyway. What does the woodmancer do, you want to know? Well, what we do is we don't just make shelves or whatever, no. We rip life from Gaia herself, the trees straight from the ground, and we take that wood and turn it into marvelous contraptions and constructions and things of like, you know, stuff that you'll put in frame or whatever, you know, that kind of crap. Yes, it is a wood. And raffling off this hat, I don't care. If somebody wants this hat, we can raffle it off, I guess. If it is likely going to fall off my head and break, though. So we'll get ready for that. Anyway, well, what is this? You don't believe me. You don't believe what we do. Well, perhaps a demonstration is in order. Okay, I do have to take off my hat. The first thing in woodmancy is you start with a plan. You have to carefully design what you want and what you want it to be, and then through your mystical powers, you create what it is that you want. Okay, so as you can see, woodmancy. And if that wasn't enough, there's more I could show you. First, we have to change locations, because obviously not everything I make is in the same place. And my dogs are angry because I'm yelling now. There's a lot of yelling that's going to be happening during this whole presentation. Nextly, so that first shelf, that is my greatest creation, but I have others, bigger ones. They're also impressive. Perhaps you need some shelves for your garage. Well, you design them, and then you create them. Still not convinced, are you? More shelves. Design them, create them. Still not so satisfied? Very well. Make an outfeed table for your table saw. Design it, create it. All right, so what do you need is to become a wood? Well, let's go over the first things that you'll want to do as a woodmancer. You can get pretty far with just the items you see on this table here, this outfit table that I have assembled. First off, you need to do designs like I was talking about. You need to have some sort of graph paper or something, a binder, whatever. Just get one of these from the very beginning. Don't use various sheets of paper that you leave all over the floor of your workshop. Instead, have them on a pad. Secondly, the science of woodmancy. Woodmancy is really about making squares, okay? Making things that are at a perfect 90-degree angle. That is why everything begins and ends with a square. Combination square, tri-square, carpenter's square. Any of these you will need. These are quite cheap. You at least need one of them to make things square. It is not about making things level. That's feng shui or something. This is woodmancy. Woodmancy is about making squares. And you also need a tape measure. As for cutting wood, you can use like a saw, like a pool saw or whatever, or just a regular hand saw, but you can get pretty far with just a circular saw. Instead, in fact, I still use a circular saw for most projects, well, not most projects, but a lot of them that require big pieces that need to be broken down, like 4x8 sheets of plywood. But you can do a lot of cuts with just a circular saw and then a track level. You see this level here, or not a level, a track straight edge. This one has clamps on the back side, so you can clamp it to whatever surface you're doing and then make a straight cut with your circular saw. Next, you need a bunch of clamps. I've got various clamps here, but honestly, you can never have too many clamps. This is a small smattering of my clamps here because I've got them all over the damn shop. They're even over here. They're everywhere because you need a lot of clamps for woodmancy. Lastly, you'll need some PPE. Well, not lastly, there's two other things. Lastly, I'll say lastly several times. I don't care. You need PPE, goggles, respirator. This is Bluetooth earmuffs. Really, just buy that right off the bat because then now you can listen to your favorite podcast while you're doing woodmancy. And then, some gloves. Now, gloves are kind of iffy. You should only use gloves for certain situations, like you're doing sanding or something like that. Don't use them with a table saw. I mean, legitimately, don't use gloves with a table saw. That is not safe. And then sanding is the worst part of any woodmancy project. I got glue back there, but you'll want random orbital sander, most likely for finishing most jobs. Belt sander is kind of optional. You don't really need it. You'll need some hand stuff. These are just blocks with sandpaper that I've like taped on the top with double-sided tape. And there you go. With those in mind, you can get quite a bit done in woodmancy. I'll close the door because I know my wife is going to be leaving soon. All right. Now, what else? What are the main things you need to do woodmancy? Time and money. Lots of money, and then as much time as you want to put into it. Now, if you're going to start with those things that I showed you there, you can get away with just a couple $100 or so. You can get pretty far with just that much. But if you're starting to get serious, then you need to start thinking about some other tools. The table saw can be your most versatile of woodmancy tools. This is just a camera holder thing, that the kids on Tickety Talk use. But this can do your rip cuts. It can also do cross cuts with the sled and all that. You'll see the table saw being used in the presentation that I have today. But this is the tool that I don't mind that I spent a ton of cash on now because I really got into it and I really liked it. And honestly, the SawStop table saw is like real legit. It is awesome. So if you're going to get into it, get into it. That's weird that you can see me on the other screen. I should have turned off the camera. Anyway, also a miter saw. A lot of woodmancers, particularly Matthias Wimble, the Canadian woodmancer, he doesn't really use a miter saw that much, but that's kind of weird to me because I seem to use it all the time for making crosscuts. And I would have gotten a better one if I had done it again today, but this one has gotten me pretty far. He seems to use the drill press often, but I don't have a whole bunch of uses for drill press. A planer, this can do quite a bit of things that are hard to do by hand. This one's pretty important to have at some point. You don't need it in the beginning. Sandpaper can get you pretty far, but at some point when you're doing the thicknessing of your own boards, you'll want a thickness planer. You don't have to get the expensive one, but I got it because I was going to use it a bunch. Bandsaw, it's kind of whatever, depends on the kind of project you're doing. I've got a dust collector here, and I actually recommend getting a dust collector. Once you start getting some of these big tools, it is for sucking up tons of wood. And plus there's like tons of, wood dust in there, which is really cool to watch this bag fill up over time. Because then you're like, wow, look at all the sawdust I'm making. That's pretty cool. Woodmancy. Let's see. I believe lastly, I'm saying lastly again, is a router. Now, you can't really see my router. I have it in this desktop table. This desktop table kind of sucks, but it's okay. But it's good for certain specific uses. You can see the router bit. kind of poking out the top here. This red insert really sucks and it's not flush with the rest of the table. That's the part I hate about it. So it's okay for long boards that goes across the whole thing, but sucks for small pieces. And also when you first are inserting the piece to run across there, like all that stuff kind of sucks and it sucks to set up. Anyway, this desktop is not so great. One of these days I'm going to get a nice one. The actual router, it's underneath here. I don't know if you can actually see it. It probably looks like a garbage disposal in your sink at this point, but it's just a round tool. That's one of the 2 horsepower ones, which is pretty powerful. You can also get away with a hand router as well. I have both, of course. What I should also tell you about is watch out for is the router bits that you buy. If you get one of these cheap sets on Amazon or whatever, what you need to do is figure out the ones that you use most often and then quickly replace those with higher quality ones, because these cheap ones suck and they start to break and they start to throw pieces of metal everywhere in your face. You need to protect your face. Get quality bits eventually. All right. That's all of the tools I was going to show you as things that are required or useful. Oh no, there was one last one. That's right. I couldn't move it over to the table. This is actually one of the first ones I would pick up as well. This is a pocket hole machine. This is good for making easy joints. Now they don't look as good as like fine woodworking, but certainly for making bench, shop furniture or whatever, it's pretty good. It's really good at making butt joints. All right, this is the outfeed table I was doing. If we go underneath here, you can see the holes that are made by the pocket holer. It is really good at making a butt joint like this one. A butt joint is when one board up against the other board, like you put these holes in. It's pretty strong joint actually. Not bad. It's kind of ugly, but it's for depending on the usage. All right, let's get into the cutting board. There are a bunch of papers all over the ground. Oh shit. Okay, is that no. All right, that's better. I just turned off all the sound. As close as I'm going to get. All right. Okay, supposedly I have Whoodmancy. What do I want to open up here? First off, before I continue, are there any burning questions that you have so far? I'm not monitoring the chat and I shall not do it the whole time from this point forward or ever.
It sounds like you, or it looks like you spelled.
Oh, sorry, my whole thing is muted.
You spelled Whoodmancy wrong. The H is missing.
It's an invisible H. It's there, you just can't see it. ASCII cannot show the Whoodmancer's H. Thank you for the question. Very well, let's move on. We're making a cutting board. How do you make one? You're thinking, oh, I could totally make a cutting board by looking at YouTube. Well, you're right. That's how you do it. You go to YouTube and learn how to do all this shit. That is what I've done. I mean, no, this is secret, not necromancer, Whoodmancer's code that you can't learn anywhere but from other Whoodmancers like myself. Anyway, moving on. This is goal 1. We need a bunch of straight boards. How do we get that? This is the goal. This is what we want to achieve. Wood doesn't start like this from the ground. It starts like, it looks like a tree. That is what wood looks like. And you must take that tree and deform it, file it, cut it, make it bend to your will. And really, you just go buy it in board form from like Lowe's or Home Depot, or if you've got a lumber place nearby, or if you're so lucky to have a lumber mill near you. Anyway, moving on. You need to select some boards. All right, for making a cutting board, not all boards, not all woods are created. I mean, that's for everything. Not all woods are created equal. But you don't want any open grain boards like oak. So basically stay away from oak and ash and some other stuff. But primarily you want walnut, mahogany, birch, cherry, butterwork. There's like a gajillion hardwoods out there. You know, no one person can name all of them. It would be impossible. No one could do that. Anyway, so for this today, we're doing mahogany over there on the left. I'm assuming you can see my mouse cursor when I point at things. Can you see that pointing at the mahogany? Good. Birch here, and then I have a whole bunch of scraps of walnut that I am using. So the first thing I want to do is cut it to length. Now, I sped up all of these videos because I originally filmed them as if I was going to like show you the video straight, and I was like, wow, this is boring as shit. There's no way anyone would watch this. We are going to speed this up, and I will talk over it instead, and then try to give you little bits and pieces. But I'm cutting it to 18.5. So we're trying to make a cutting board that's 12 by 18. I do have plans for it in my notebook over there that I showed you originally. I thought I was going to show you that during the presentation, but I forgot. I mean, I intentionally didn't. And so now you can see me, I have a stop block set up so that I could do them all at 18.5, but then this piece of birch is just so damn big. And I'm also explaining to you here that it had snipe from the planer that the lumber mill uses, and I'm having to chop off some pieces and crap like that. Like, imagine if I had actually made a video this long and all of these details in it, how awful it would have been. Luckily for you, I used my Whoodmancy powers to edit this film and speed it up and then talk over it. But that's the basic idea. First, we're going to make these boards 18.5 inches, and then after that, we're going to bring them to the table saw. All right. I'm also having to measure it by hand now. I can't use the stop block because I'm having to cut from the other side for this piece of birch because it's just so damn big. But that was it. I also did various measurements during it to make sure that I was able to cut enough pieces out. I needed to have, you know, after my calculations, how many pieces I needed to have in order to glue together to make a 12-inch width cutting board. Well, depth cutting board. I don't know how you want to say that. I guess it'd be depth. All right. Nextly, now that we've got these 18.5-inch pieces of board that are, you know, anywhere from 4 to 8 inches in thickness, now we need to actually get them to 1 1/8 inch thick, which is going to be the pre-planed size of the cutting board. We're aiming for a 1-inch thick cutting board. So that's what we're doing now. I even took a video of me setting up the table saw as if anyone wanted to see that. But I even put it in here. I didn't cut it out. I was like, they want to see this. That's how much I knew you wanted to see that. But here we go. Now we're getting the table saw going, and we've got our boards, and I have to arrange the outfeed table. Now you see, I made an outfeed table. This was the first project I did in woodworking, was making outfeed tables so that I could work with my my table saw, so that any of the pieces that I'm cutting, I can just push them straight off the edge. In fact, this thing is so big that I can run 4 by 8 sheets of plywood or MDF or whatever across it and push it out onto the outfeed table for safety. But here we go, cutting off those pieces, and then we've got the last scrap piece, and you know, we just dump the last scrap piece when it comes off. Look at that. That one looked like a dagger, wood dagger, not an effective dagger because it would just like immediately break. All right. The other thing that you should know about using a table saw is that it is good for making things a particular width or thickness on it. So that's what we're doing here. As long as I have the fence set up at 1 1/8 inch, every piece that I run through there should be precisely 1 1/8 inch. Now, that's only true if you're like really good at using a table saw. At some point, you're going to suck at it. Oh, right here, I had some pieces that were cupping, so the board looked kind of like this. So I am using my hand planes actually here to kind of knock off these edges on the end to try and flatten it out a little bit better. And then I take it back to the table saw.
It actually worked out pretty well, and that's the first time I've ever tried to do that in a real project. I was pleasantly surprised. I do think I go back and like run it across the table saw anyway, but that worked pretty good. But really, that part doesn't matter so much for the cutting board, because we're going to run it through the thickness planer later anyway. But I wanted to try it out. All right, so goal 1 is achieved. This is what it looked like at the end of this part. We have a whole bunch of boards that look like this. Now, our step 2, objective 2, I mean, is to dry fit, get to the dry fit cutting board. This isn't glued up. This is just a bunch of pieces, you know, stick together to get to this. So this is where we're trying to go. So now we're going to split a few of these boards in half. So I'm going to show you first, we take this and we kind of like, you know, do the artistic part of making a cutting board, which is just kind of arrange the boards in some way that you think makes it look good. So I had all those boards, they're all just kind of together, and now you just kind of, you know, randomly throw them out there and see what the hell it looks like. So that's what I've done here. And then I also need it to be 12 inches maximum width, because that's what my planer can do. So I'm now taking these boards and running it and cutting them in half. Now this is a more dangerous cut. I have this gripper tool, which is good for, oh, actually, I'm doing a bit of a different part here. I decided that all of these boards were not flat enough on the faces for gluing. So I'm actually jointing them on at least some of them. I'm going to go back and do all of them at some point, but here I'm cutting them in half. So that's how I get the thinner strips. And it doesn't matter that they're perfectly in half. I just kind of cut them in some way, because you see, at some point it is an artistic endeavor, and it doesn't matter if they're perfectly symmetrical or whatever. You're going to arrange them to make it look good. And that's what we're going to do here now. So I've got all of the full boards, I got some of the half boards, and all I'm doing is just kind of throwing it together. And then at some point I'm here, I'm just looking at it like, all right, that'll work, whatever. You know, I'd eat off of that. And so that was it. So one cutting board down, and now we're doing the same thing with this one, where we just kind of scramble them up, see what we're going to do. Oh, by the way, I'm making 2 cutting boards at once, if you didn't know that, because I didn't actually say it, and you probably didn't know that until I just told you, but we're making 2 cutting boards at once. That's another good rule of woodworking, which is when you're going to do one thing, just go ahead and do it twice, because at the end, you're just like, man, I really wish I had 2 of these. All right, so here I am trying to sandpaper the face of that, because I'm like, man, these mahogany pieces are really rough on the face edges still. It's hard to glue together. There's a whole bunch of crap on the face edge. And so at some point, I'm just like, this isn't going to work. Let's take it back to the table saw, and we will joint the faces of this. To joint it means to essentially flatten it, to make a perfectly flat piece of wood. And we call it joint because you're going to take 2 flat pieces of wood, put them together, and glue them in a wood joint there. That's why it's called that. It's insider Whoodmancy knowledge. There's probably also a name for that joint, which I don't know. All Whoodmancers have named every joint possible. I know the butt joint from earlier, because like that's the easy one that everyone does at some point. So I know that one. Okay, so now I've jointed the faces. Now they're flat. Now I can actually press them and glue them together, clamp them and glue them together. So objective 2 is achieved. I took all the boards. I also marked them. You can see the markings across the top there where I have like the X. That's so that when I took them back over the table saw to mess with them and fix the faces, I could still put them back in here and know which boards went where. I could have just rearranged them again, but I had gotten them in the order that I liked them in, which meant that I didn't want to mess that up. You can also see that these faces look real crappy and stuff on top. You can see wood burns here and stuff from the table saw. If you didn't know, a table saw goes real freaking fast. And so with all that speed, there is friction and it can burn the wood. And that's expected. With technique, you can avoid much of your burns, but obviously I suck at that. This one looked pretty good though. I was like, not bad. But then we're gonna clean all that up later. Section 3 is the glue up. Now, gluing up is one of the more stressful parts of this because you have to do it quickly. The glue gives you a certain amount of setup time when you're using. I'm using Type Bond 3 here. Type Bond 3 actually has the longest setup time, and it's also waterproof, which is why everybody uses it for cutting boards these days. But Type Bond 3 is good for it. And you can see me going real fast here to do it. This is real time, actually. That's how trees naturally move in the background here in Texas. This is real time. That's how fast I am. I'm very fast. There we go. I got it all in there. I clamp it up. These clamps that I have, these parallel bar clamps, they are super legit, especially if you're making a cutting board. I really love using those. And then I use some of my other quick clamps in addition to that to help. I use all of my clamps. I don't just use the parallel bar clamps and the quick clamps. I'm using the other ones as well. Oh yes, I also tried out using some wax paper this time instead of getting glue all over my clamps. I put wax paper on there and that seemed to work out pretty good. The last thing you should know is that after you glue it up, you let it sit for 25 minutes. No longer, no less, although I do longer and less all the time. Approximately 25 minutes, whatever you feel like. Bit of an artistic endeavor here too. And then you come back and you scrape the glue off. That's what you're going to see here. Well, it will happen again. Again, real time. This is me, how fast I move when I'm gluing up wood. Yes, and clamping. Incredible. So there I am. I'm also using my cheap, dull chisels in order to try and scrape some of the glue off so that it doesn't get all caught up in my planer knives. What is a planer? A planer is for getting a certain thickness of wood. So imagine the edge of this cutting board. You've seen it. It looks rough. And now there's a whole bunch of glue kind of stuck to it and stuff as well. I'm going to run it through this planer, which a planer, if it's this thick, it's going to cut off a little bit of the top there and just shave it right off to a certain thickness. Planer is like one of the most satisfying things to use in woodworking. It's an expensive tool, but boy, is it fun to use. So there's the glue up. That's right after clamping. You can see all the glue squeeze out here, all the little bubbles and stuff. Now that's all going to try and dry up. You give it 25 minutes. If you try to scrape it immediately after gluing, it's going to make a huge mess. Huge mess. Don't do that. Wait 25 minutes, and then we'll start to ball up into little partially hardened pieces of glue, and then they just scrape right off. It is incredible. This is after the 25 minutes and scraping it, and you can see there's still some roughness in here, and I actually go over it one more time, and I did it in the video and stuff, but this is just an in-progress picture that you can see there. And here's both of them side by side. And you can see how rough and kind of tumble this edge is, but we're going to clean it up. Next is planing. Again, I said that this is one of the more enjoyable parts. First off, you mark the surface with a pencil. Why are you doing this? Because you want to see if you took off a full layer or not. You'll see it in action here soon. So we're going to make the first couple passes. And we do that and we check it to make sure it's still like working right and stuff. When you're in there, you're just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I better just check after every time I do it and see if it's doing what I'm expecting it to do. So that's what we're doing. A lot of doing. So I think I ran this at slower speed. Yeah, I kind of show it to the camera, but we'll have to look at the picture. All right, here are the two side by side. You can see the one marked and hasn't been through the planer, and you can see the one that was marked previously, and you can still see some marks in here. So there's a valley there, but we need to run it through the planer until we cut off all of that valley so that it is flat, perfectly flat. So that's what we're doing. Let's plane it some more. Keep it going. And there's a lot of this me walking back and forth, running through the planer, adjusting it. The adjust is on the back side, so you can't really see it, but I'm just moving it up by one full turn is a 1/16 of an inch, and I'm moving it by like maybe a quarter turn every time. So if you did the math on that, you would know that that is theoretically a 64th of an inch, although I sometimes do like a 5th turn or a half turn or whatever, but I do it just a little bit at a time and making sure it looks good when it comes out. And then I'm even showing the camera, but since I've sped it up, you can't really see any of the crap that I'm showing. You'll see it at the end though. Wow, Evan, you are doing a great job. Good Whoodmancy. Incredible, incredible. Also, you can see this big hose here. That's my the dust collector. So all of the shavings are being collected through there and being spit into that big bag, which eventually fills up over time. And then you've got like 30 pounds of wood shavings that you just throw, I guess you just throw away. I don't know, you could throw it in a furnace or something, but it's not like we use furnaces here in Texas because it's so goddamn hot. Even right now, I'm sweating because my shop is not air conditioned. Why did I decide to do this part out here? I don't know. So now you can see what it looks like before and after. You saw the rough shape it was in previously, all the glue, all the burn marks and all that. And then, man, doesn't that look actually pretty damn sharp at this point? It's really good. Okay, so going, there we go. Nextly, I'm going to trim the edges, and you can see that the edge here is just like really rough shape, no big deal. We're just going to cut off a flat piece on the end and make it nice and flat. I'm trying to make it square. As I talked about before, we like to make things square. So here's my table saw. And then on here, I have what's called a crosscut sled. This is a very incredible tool that you can build yourself to use with your table saw. It allows you to push the piece of material across this sliding sled. So it is the sled that is moving and not the material relative to the sled. It is on there at a certain state. You can also use a miter gauge or whatever, but that's for muggles to use. A fine woodworker will use a table saw sled. It is one of the first things I built from my table saw when I made it. And it's actually kind of fun to do all the math and stuff to make that work. It's actually square it up. So here we're cutting it off. It looked pretty good, but not quite all the way there. So I cut off just a little bit more. Beautiful. And then flip it to the other side, do this side as well. And then those pieces of wood start hitting me, and I'm like, okay, don't do that again. And I don't cut too much off at one time. I'm gonna do the other one as well. Yes, throw all those away. They wronged you, they must go in the trash. Oh no, apparently I didn't learn my lesson yet. Okay, good, good. All right, I must have learned my lesson doing another project. Good. So there we go. There's the edges looking real good there. In fact, like if you were to take these two cutting boards and then you like chop them up, on edge, you could actually make an in-grade cutting board using those patterns like that across the top. And boy, that would look really good. But I didn't do that. Instead, we're just doing the straight lines on it. All right, we need to do the handholds. Now, this is an optional piece of making a cutting board. You don't actually have to do, but I like doing it because it's a little bit of a wow factor, really. And also it makes it easier to use because it's, when it's flat on a table, then it's got the little handholds and you can pick it up, all that. So I set up a bit of a template here on my router table. We saw the router table earlier. You can see these pieces of wood that are clamped here to the side. This is the guide that I'm going to be using. So let's see what it looks like. So I'm running it over the router here, and you do a little bit at a time. You don't do too much at a time. I'm in fact even showing you that I'm just doing a little bit at a time as I'm doing it, because a router can be very unwieldy. It is spinning at high speed. It can grip the wood and throw it to the side and all that sort of stuff. You don't want that to happen. So you just do a little bit of touch, a little kiss, and then it'll work out great. So here I am doing a little bit at a time, doing both sides of it. And then at the very end, you'll see what, of course, I'm showing you, but it's just a flash on the screen, so you can't actually see it in action. So there you can sort of see the handhold, but don't worry, there's a picture after this whole thing, we'll see it. But I have to do both sides. I believe on this one, I didn't do it a step at a time, and I just the whole thing. And I think I was even talking about in there that I was going like, okay, let's see what it looks like if you do it like this. I want you to see how much harder it is. But then I sped up the video, so you can't see how much harder it is. And anyway, it's, it's fine, what else? Oh yeah, that looks sharp. So here we go. That's what it looks like at the first cuts. So you're running the router in there, you run it across a little bit and you come out. So really I do this side where I go out and back, and I just do a little bit at a time. I don't usually go in the middle and then go across. That must have been a first test cut or something like that. I don't remember what the hell that was about, but that's what it is. And then this is what it looks like after the first pass, where I've taken off just about 1/8 of an inch. And then I do the second pass where it's about not an 1/8 of an inch, because now here's a 1/4 inch. That looks closer to 1/2 inch. Maybe I did a 1/4 inch for both. I don't know, maybe it's 3/8. I didn't measure it. You don't need to measure something like this. This is the artwork. Moving on. got a little riled up there. We're rounding the edges. All right, legit, the best part of woodworking, as I found out on my first project, was rounding the edges. Unfortunately, I didn't take a video of it. I didn't take a video of my favorite part. After I was done, I was like, you idiot, you didn't video this. No, where's my picture? The picture is gone. Oh, there's a transition on the picture. Whoodmancy. That's what that is. That's intentional. I'm sure of it. I know how to use Google Slides, I promise. All right, so here you can see the unrounded part, and then this is the rounded part. When you run that router over the top, the rounding bit there, and then you see the wood coming out nice, buttery smooth, and a nice rounded formation. It's pretty awesome. It looks real great. Real pleased with that whole part. And so now you can see this is another angle. So you can see how that rounded edge looks. And boy, doesn't nothing just look perfect. It is perfect. And then, you know, this part is not. And you can kind of see the shading and all that stuff to see how it, you know, kind of looks. Whoa. And then you take off your mask after you've been doing a whole bunch of routing and it's really hot and sweaty. And then you've got the mask lines all over your face. This is what you will look like if you get into Whoodmancy. But here we go. We're getting very close. We did the rounding. I did hand edging on these. You don't see it here because I apparently didn't take the picture after doing the hand edging on these, but I did hand edging on those as well when I was doing the sanding. All right, now it's just step 8. This is the worst step of woodworking that no woodworker really wants to do, which is sanding. Sanding takes a long ass time. Oh my God. In fact, oh no, it's playing the sound. Let's shut that crap up. I sped this one up to 40 times the speed, and this video is still really long. I spend a long time sanding crap that I make. So if you've gotten something from me, I've spent more time than I wish sanding that crap. And this is, in fact, lots of sanding. And changing grits, you know, you start at 80 grit, get a rough sand of it. You know, 80 grit takes off a lot of, don't do that. 80 grit takes off a lot of material, then you switch to your 120 grit, and then we're gonna spray some water here. We're doing that to raise the grain. This is an old woodmancer's trick that if you don't do this, whenever you wash your cutting board the first time, it's going to feel really rough. Andy Baumgartner has experienced this because I was such an inexperienced woodmancer. On my very first one, I didn't do this step, and he's like, hey, the wood grain is like popping up and shit, and it's all really rough after the first wash. I'm like, oh, damn, that sucks. You can take your piece of sandpaper at 180 and just run it over across the top and you'll feel good, but like, who's going to do that? You know, you're going to be afraid that you're going to screw it up. Not me, because I'm a woodmancer. I'm okay with screwing up, and I do it all the time. There's been about 100 mistakes so far that you haven't seen in these videos that I've made. But there we go. There's a whole bunch of sanding, and now this thing is looking real good. And while you're sanding, you run your hand across the wood because it really starts to feel really great after you get to sand it down really good. Oh my gosh, there it is. Wow. Is that finished? Or is it time to oil this sucker? Live. Live. We have the cutting board here. Oh, I need to move stuff around so that I can actually do this live. I need to switch back. It's probably out of battery or whatever. And I also need to mute this. Oh, crap. Is that muted? I don't know. Shit. I'm going to find out. I mute myself here. Okay, here we go. That looks like that's approximately correct. My head's probably cut off. You're going to have to live with that. This is a cheap Amazon Basics silicone mat. I actually recommend getting one of these as well. It's pretty good because you get glue on here and then it doesn't matter. The glue just kind of like comes off later. All right. We have a cutting board here. Oh, I didn't pre-wipe it down. Been sitting in this room, and this room is pretty dusty. A little bit coming off there. Now, I believe my sound should be on, so if someone asked a question at the moment, I'd hear it, but we're ready to go. This is Howard's cutting board oil. I really like that. I also, after I oil several times, I finish it off with the Butcher Block conditioner, which contains some wax as well. But I start off with just the oil to start it off and really get it in there. All right, here we go. Are you ready for the most marvelous of Whoodmancy's powers? Do you see it? Behold, feast your eyes on the transformation of the wood. It stays like this until the end of time, or when the wood, eventually the oil seeps out of the wood, but that, takes a millennia. Believe me, I've seen a few for the countless years I've been alive. You can actually count how many years. It's not countless. It's like 37 or something. There we go. That's one side done. We come around, we do the other side. And then in fact, we oil this thing about 3 times with the regular oil. And then I come back and do the conditioner again. And I leave it to set for about a day in between each oiling or so, depending on my mood. Sometimes I let it sit there for longer. Sometimes I'm just delaying the inevitable because I give away these cutting boards or sell them or whatever, and I don't want to lose them out of my possession after all of the goddamn work that I put into it, particularly the sanding stage. The sanding is just awful. It's not as bad as finishing though. Staining is worse than sanding, okay? Let's be real. Staining is the actual worst. I even have a sprayer for doing staining and it still sucks. Staining is the worst, and I've done staining on all of my original shop projects. So now I have to like stain all of them so that they all look the same. It was a big mistake to ever touch a jar of stain. Don't do it. All right, now I'm about done with the first pass of oil, which means the presentation is about done. I want to check and see if there are any questions, burning or otherwise, that you may have for me. Someone speak up just to check that I have my sound on. No, I turned the sound all the way down. I can't hear you if you're talking. Someone could have been talking this whole time and trying to tell me things. And in fact, maybe you missed the whole thing and I didn't see it. What a disaster that would be. Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear us, Evan?
Oh, there we go. Now I've got my sound turned on. Okay. Sorry. Eva, were you speaking?
I was just testing. I think Kyle, you had a question, right?
Nope, I was just shouting Whoodmancy.
Thank you. Thank you for shouting Whoodmancy.
So Evan, after you've done your oiling and your conditioning, how long does all that last? What's the maintenance after I get this cutting board? I want to really be prepared.
That's a good question. Now, I use 2 different types of finishes for cutting boards. I've done this oiling method more times than I've done the sort of a lacquer method. There's another. It's not Howard. It's maybe it was Howard. No, Watco makes a butcher block finish that is pretty good as well. And then some of your cutting boards out there have that on there. And that one requires less maintenance. And the Wood Whisperer recommends that one. If you know him, he's another Whoodmancer, famous. As for this one, some places kind of recommend oiling it perhaps like once a month or so. In my experience, you can get away with not doing it that often. In fact, if you never oiled it, like, it would probably be fine. But you know, you want it to look sharp and nice and presentable, and people to look at it and be like, "Wow, where did you get that? What kind of Whoodmancer made that?" I mean, what do I know about Whoodmancy? I've never heard the term in my life. Of course, I'm not part of the Whoodmancers Guild. That's what they would say. Next question. Or did that answer your question?
It did. So I just, you know, I'm gonna have to pause the video and get some of that conditioner so that I know exactly what I have to buy.
Right. That's it's an advertisement for Howard's here.
Howard's
What do we
butcher
do?
block conditioner cutting board oil. Got it.
Yes,
Surely I
you
can get that
just need
on
the conditioner. I'm using the oil, which I'm doing first, and then whoever gets this cutting board, I'm going to oil it a few more times, and then I'm going to throw some of the conditioner on, and then that's what I'm going to send it away with, is the conditioner on there. Although, like, it'll be slightly slimy the first time you touch it, probably, but you know, I usually wipe it down so it's not too slimy. Hopefully, it'll be okay. You'll make
Yeah,
do.
Evan, you need to send me all the materials and the name of the saw and all of that stuff, so we can send that out with the summary and the video later.
Sort of like a
Yes.
recipe.
We can do that. Any more questions?
Where do we actually go to order it?
Good question. The raffle we have, there's the raffle where one will be giving away. I occasionally do commissions on these cutting boards, but I don't do it I do it for a lot of money, and it even feels like not enough for me for how much time and effort I put into it. But I'm probably not going to be doing any commissions anytime soon. But you know, but this one, they will tell you how to get this one.
Okay, cool.
Yes, James, James Allen and Chris Ball. They both ordered one. I'm not supposed to drop the names of my clients, but I don't care. I've done it. Whoodmancer's code broken. But they both really liked the brick pattern one that I did previously, and then I made those, and I took over a year of procrastination of finally getting around to it and finishing them up. Luckily, those gentlemen were so gracious, and they did not yell at me for still saying, like, "Hey, do you want this?" at the end. Anyway, but they turned out beautifully. Those are excellent looking cutting boards in my eyes. Any further questions about Whoodmancy?
Yes. Do I need all those tools to create the shelf in the garage, the wall shelf you have?
To make the shelf that I have.
Yeah.
Now, you can make the shelf I have with just like legit, you can do it with just the circular saw. Like, you can get it all done with that. But pretty soon into that project, I realized how many cross cuts I was doing on the long 2x4s, and I decided to buy this miter saw immediately because it can make, you know, it can do those long cuts across, you know, those long cross cuts for all these 2x4s that I was cutting up. And I had to cut up a whole bunch of them. So the circular saw, and then I would recommend getting that, but you know, really you only want that if you're gonna be able to set it up and do a lot of cuts with it. But really you can get it all done with just the circular saw. And plans for doing that, you can find a number of those plans online, you know, YouTube and stuff. If you just, you know, if you just Google search garage shelves, like, you know, homemade garage shelves out of 2x4s or whatever, you'll find instructions more or less for doing those. Like Anna White and other Whoodmancers have made those. And I also have plans. I mean, I could share my plans with you. I don't know that they're actually that useful. They're not really plans. It's just drawings and SketchUp, and then I know what I'm going to do after that. So it doesn't have like real steps. You'll want to go to one of those people that have made actual steps. Further questions?
All right. This was awesome, Evan. I don't know if anyone will be able to follow up on this one.
I hope not.
No, it's like Stack Talks is forever canceled after this one. This was the best ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And also love that some new stackers got introduced to Evan. So this is Evan. And as they've said, that this Evan, that is normal. Anyway, thank you. The raffle, actually, because we don't want to miss anyone who might have like joined and left and not just take the screenshots. We will get a report of all the attendance 15 minutes after the meeting ended. And I will then we will then draw and announce the winner. And the draw will happen with, Evan giving us a number without seeing the list, and we'll just count down. And I will announce it in water cooler later, and I will also share the video in water cooler. Thank you everyone for attending. Again, thank you, Evan. All the tacos to Evan.
And Evan, I really appreciate you toning it down for today. That
Yes,
was
I really toned it down. I didn't want to scare you too much. So really took it easy on you today. Thank you everybody for coming. I mostly enjoyed this. Everything except for the damn video editing. But other than that was fun.
and the
Thank you
same.
again for coming.
Thank you everyone, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, take care.